isn't it interesting that when you talk about kind of the nuts and bolts, when you talk about process, you learn so much more about their personality than when you ask them about, who they were sleeping with on the set or something.
Or worse, if you ask them what the theme of the picture is. These directors didn't like to talk about theme or art or anything like that, It was just they were making a picture. They never thought anybody would take it too seriously. That was the attitude that they had. Privately, I think they were artists, but it wasn't a good thing to walk around Hollywood saying, I'm an artist. Still isn't.
At the time, they left that to the critics for Cahiers du Cinema, who were just discovered. Right at that time, you were just in the thick of this whole construction of an auteur theory. Did you feel a part of that?
Yeah, very much so, because the French, I read the Cahiers du Cinema, and the French, whether it was Truffaut, Godard, Chabrol, they had a tremendous impact on explaining American mainstream movies to Americans, to us. Just the way the French explain jazz. The French have a very good way of understanding popular culture, particularly American popular culture, and explaining it back to us. And then we attack the French.
Well, they hate us, but they love our culture, but they go back and forth too.
But I was definitely in that thing. The auteur theory is a mistranslation of the French politique des auteurs, which means is a political statement. It's not a theory of any kind. Truffaut didn't think of it as a theory. He thought of it as a political statement. These American filmmakers working at the height of the industry had a personality and influenced the telling of their stories and the stories themselves as much as any private, personal artist who made independent films, which they didn't exist at the time. So that was the position paper that they took, and I went along with it. And in my interviews with all these directors, it's very clear that they were very, very much involved in their work, and that it was very personal. Jimmy Stewart once said to me, he said, nobody ever told Hitchcock what to do. I never saw anybody tell Lubitsch what to do. No, they did what they wanted to do.
He has about 50 more of those, but he could actually do a Rich Little night with Peter Bogdanovich. I think that just shows me what a great student of actors you are. There's so much art and insight in the way that you do impressions of them.
Well, it's because I knew them, I'm not doing the standard Judy thing. I asked Cary Grant once, as a matter of fact, where that came from. That impressionists always used to say, Judy, Judy, Judy. He says, I don't know where that came from. I never said that in a picture. I said, I know, so where do you think it comes from? I don't know. And then one day I saw a film called Only Angels Have Wings, in 1939, in which Rita Hayworth plays a girl named Judy. And he never says Judy, 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 but he does say, he says Judy quite often. Well, you never were a good girl, Judy. That's the way you were, Judy. And he says her name quite often, so I'm sure that's where it came from. So I called Cary and said, I think I figured it out. Only Angels Have Wings, Rita Hayworth, Judy, Judy. You don't say Judy, 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 but you say Judy quite often. I think you got it. I think you figured it out. I think that's it. Thank you.
He could make one word feel like three. He gave them such charm and weight.
He could. We were invited to the John Ford, the first AFI tribute to John Ford, the AFI Life Achievement Award. It was to John Ford.
He didn't work with Ford, did he?
No, but everybody in Hollywood went that night. And Cary was there on the line, handing in his ticket. And I was right next to him. We'd been talking, and he stepped up to this lady at a table, a middle-aged woman. She was looking down. He says, I'm terribly sorry. I forgot my ticket. Can I get in, please? And she didn't look up. She said, name? And he said, Cary Grant. Now she looks up. She says, "You don't look like Cary Grant." And quick as a wink, he goes, "I know, nobody does."
I had a thought of a bizarre exercise for you. This is completely nuts, but you have so many stories of great directors and great actors telling stories about great directors and great actors. Can you go all the way back to the beginning of cinema? It's only 110 years or so. Can you have a story within a story within a story?
Probably. I did know a lot of people from that period. I mean, Alan Dwan started directing in 1910. I remember I said to Orson one time, I said, "I'm interviewing Alan Dwan." He says, "Alan Dwan? My God, I mean, he started directing around the time of the invention of the electric light." Which is right.
Well, there's a good story right there. But it's so odd to think that the Last Picture Show, which I came of age with, I mean, there's almost as much time between the Last Picture Show and today as there was between the Last Picture Show and the beginning of sound. As there was, I mean, it's just dizzying.
That's true, actually, yeah. It's been a few years.
Well, what was...
Sorry I had to point that out.
No, this is what's interesting to me. You will always be eternal. Sorry, but I guess I put a damper on the whole thing. But I see you still here as a kid.
David, it's all right.
Sorry. I listened to an interview he did with Jerry Lewis at the Museum of the Moving Image. Where he gave me such a hard time. I was surprised she didn't walk off the stage.
I was tempted. But he's done a lot of nice things for me too, so I weighed it out.
He was just razzing you and he was playing with you.
He was a complete shit that night.
Thank you for not imitating him.
I can do Jerry, are you kidding? What are you talking about? I started doing Jerry. I could do Dean too. I was a kid, I could do Dean and Jerry both. In grammar school, I mean in kindergarten, my nickname was Bugs because I did a very good Bugs Bunny. And then as I got older, the nickname became either Dean or Jerry or Marlon, because I did Brando pretty well too. You know, I could talk like Marlon. People thought it sounded like Marlon.
What is it? I mean, I still see you as a 20-year-old, maybe because I have that image of
I
you in
wish.
Targets. But in Targets, you were sitting at the knee of Boris Karloff, still probably my favorite actor, and you were kind of drinking in the lore. Now you're a sort of eminence Grease of the American theater.
Very Grease.
Grease, you know. Well, I mean, what is it? Now people are coming to you and looking for a mentor and asking you about your opinion on for tips on how to make a movie. What does that feel like?
Oh.
But you also went through it with all these great directors. So do you have role models for how you are now?
Well, I guess so. I mean, when I'm doing something like this, the main thing is to tell the truth and get a few laughs. Mostly laughs. I think you can get more points across with humor than anything else. But yeah, I've noticed the arc of my life has gone from asking questions to being asked questions. I remember one of the last times I saw Ford. It was the last time I saw Ford. He was in Palm Desert, and I went to see, Howard Hawks lived in Palm Springs, and we drove down together to see the old man. And we walk in, and Ford says, "Jesus Christ, Howard, did he ask you all those questions too?" And Hawks said, "Yeah, he does, Jack." Ford says, "Jesus Christ, how do you stand it?" He once said to me, "Jesus Christ, Bogdanovich, is that all you can do is ask questions?" Have you never even heard of the declarative sentence?
But they loved it, didn't they? Didn't they love sharing these? I mean,
Ford pretended not to love it. And Hawks didn't mind at all. He'd like to talk about it.
They weren't sufficiently celebrated in their own time, maybe at the end of their lives, but even Hitchcock wasn't sufficiently celebrated.
No, not considering what he did. No.
To go back to the last picture show, the late, unfortunately late, shockingly late George Hickenlooper did a documentary that touched on the making of the film. It sounded like an absolutely miserable shoot for a lot of people, all sorts of tumultuous emotions and happenings going on.
You mean the Texas Film?
Texas Film. No, the last picture show.
Well, there was a lot of stuff. There was a lot of stuff that happened on that picture. I mean, my marriage fell apart. I fell in love. My father died. All of us went down to Texas in October or end of September in 1970, and when we came back around Christmas, we were all different people, and our lives had changed radically. This is before the picture was even edited or seen by anybody. The picture it was a tough period. I mean, it was very creative on the one hand, but it was tumultuous on the other. You know.
Did that process inform the film, do you think?
It gave it a certain heat. There's a certain sexual tension throughout the picture, I think, which is quite strong. Because it was quite strong there. Sybil brought a lot to that table.
Well, Timothy Bottoms was absolutely in love with her and couldn't get over not, being with her, right?
Well, I think she let him once.
Yeah, wow.
But no more.
Just like JC, it sounds like.
Yeah, she was a lot like JC. Jeff Bridges had a little thing with her too, and he warned me, he said, be careful. And he said, we saw each other recently. He said, I warned you. And I said, I know. He said, you just went for it hook, line, and sinker, didn't you? I said, I had no choice. I was smitten.
Well, it was, I mean, you were a kid from New York making your first, I mean, it must have been so intoxicating.
We were very, very involved in the picture. I mean, I was always playing music from the period. I sat and ate and drank with the crew, with the cast. I ignored the crew. It's the only picture I ever made where the crew didn't like me because I ignored them. I absolutely was completely with the actors. Lunch, dinner, not breakfast. Except with Sybil sometimes.
I'll let you have your moment.
There's a line from Lubitsch film where she says, the girls who stay for breakfast don't get invited to dinner. Wasn't true in this case.
And she turned out to have so much more depth as an actress and so much more life as a personality than she was given credit for.
Oh yeah. The funny thing is when she was doing Moonlighting, we had broken up by then. She was doing Moonlighting and Cary Grant called me up and he says, do you still speak to Sybil? I said, yes. Well, would you tell her for me that if I was still acting, she would be a wonderful leading lady for me. Would you tell her that? And I said, oh, Christ, of course I will. He said, yeah, well, you knew it all the time, didn't you? You knew it all the time. So I told Sybil it made her year. She still mentions it.